All right, so we're gonna start here. Oh, the online is dead on this game. That's crazy. I mean, I guess it makes sense. They're on that horizon. I haven't played this game in such a long time, so right now I am playing Killzone Shadowfall. Audio, and we're gonna lower down the sound effects to 10%. We're gonna lower down the voice to 10%. How come you can't lower this down anymore? All right, and we're gonna start a new game. Damn, co-op doesn't work, man. The memories. Unfortunately, we can't even skip that. Come, Brian. All right, let me get you in here. Hold on.
My friends call me Icon.
Icon. Oh Lord, what's going on, bro?
Hey, what's up? How long you been live?
How long was I live? I just started.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I just
I
started.
can't stay. I'm at work. I just saw you on, so I just jumped in.
Yeah, ain't nothing going
Oh,
on right now.
yeah, unfortunately, some of us got to pay the bills, George. You know how that go.
Some of you, okay. I mean,
You know.
I'm just saying. I gotta find a way to turn the volume down. So this is the thing that I've seen lately.
Well, what do you think? Oh God, what doomsday prediction you got now?
What addiction?
Doomsday.
It's not. It's look. So this is what I noticed, right?
Okay, what did you know?
When people start off right and they talk about I can't get off this window, man. Let me cancel this shit out. From what I notice, right?
Yes.
When I see people talk and stuff like that about like the actual the greats, right? And they talk
Okay.
about their favorite games. I don't really see a lot of PlayStation games on there. You know, you got your Final Fantasy X, you have, you know, your Personas, you have, you know, Ocarina of Time. I was thinking to
Okay.
myself, is this just nostalgia? Is this just
I don't
nostalgia?
understand.
Say it again.
I don't quite understand where you're going at with this. You're running plays, but I don't understand the plays.
What do you mean you don't understand what I'm going? What do you mean?
Everybody has their own personal opinion. My favorite game is The Last of Us.
Right,
I
no. I don't dispute that, right?
yeah.
I don't dispute that. Like, I'm not saying that you can't have your personal preferences or anything like that. That's not what I'm saying at all.
Okay.
But when you see other people talk about their, you know, their favorites, right? I don't
Uh huh.
see a lot of people talking about um, a lot of the PlayStation greats as like some of the greatest of all time. That's what I mean.
Well, where are you getting your sample size from? I mean, because of you. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can still hear you.
Okay, because one of my AirPods died. I feel like if you're basing it off of Twitter, this is a pretty bad sampling size because this is a you. I mean, I don't know how many people you follow, but I'm pretty sure you don't follow millions of people or millions of people follow you. Um, Shout out to me for having almost 3,000 people blocked. I think I'm like 100 more from 3,000.
Why you have so
So
many people
shout out.
blocked? Why? What's so deep about it? You can't take
Because
opinions.
well, no, I deal with a lot of stupid and insane bots. I deal with a lot of wild and crazy ponies. And
I
I don't
thought you
have.
were a wild pony in the West.
I am, but I'm also a pony that's set in reality.
You think
And I
so?
don't mind. Absolutely. And I don't mind people having opinions. I go toe to toe with anybody on opinions. But the problem is, opinions always turn to violence. And I can't tell you how many times I've been in an Xbox space and I've been threatened, I've been killed. My family shot up, my house burned down. the children I don't have murdered.
Oh, oh,
So,
what a
and
ridiculous thing.
I'll be 30 soon, and I'm just not dealing with that anymore. You need to start blocking these psychopaths as they appear.
On site.
So, and I'll plus I block OnlyFans girls and all that other extra shit too.
Wait. You're not gonna just high step over that shit. OnlyFans
You know?
girls.
Hell yeah, I don't mind your hustle, but you ain't hustling me. Hey, I applaud the hustle.
So
but
what?
you ain't gonna hustle me.
So what? Are you afraid that you're gonna get got?
No, I ain't afraid of that at all. It's just that that's not my bag. You know what I mean? I'm not on here to sell shit, promote shit. I'm on here to post gameplay clips, talk a little bit of shit, have a little bit of fun, meet good gamers like the two that just joined. I can vouch for these guys. These guys are legit gamers. These guys are legit cool. So I'm on here to meet people like that. I'm on here to meet people like the Bards, the Personas, the people in the Pony Barn. I don't get along with everybody in the Pony Barn. Of course not. That's insane. You know what I mean? And I don't hate all Xbox gamers, just the crazy, unhinged ones. But I'm just not taking people's craziness anymore, man. I have been like that for over a year now. You know what I mean? People are fucking nuts when it comes to these plastic boxes. And if you haven't seen it, then you haven't been paying attention.
All right, but you can say that again.
Say again?
And so you can say that again. That shit is that's wild, man.
I find it really crazy that people tie their self-worth to a plastic box. But that's just my opinion.
So who is Muck? Do you know who Muck is? So I have to look at these.
Oh, Muck's a good dude. Hamid's a good dude. I don't know the dude at the bottom.
Because these guys, some of these guys that come up in this bitch, yo, be
Monk's a good dude.
They be like 30.
One of the best dudes on here.
They be like 30, 40 years old, yo, farting in the mic and shit like that, like they 2 years old. So.
Don't tell him I said it though. He is a conquer warrior.
Hey, Brian, I have one special request.
What's up?
When you reach 2,099, block me for the 3,000 for a week, so you could say I was your 3,000 block.
Absolutely, man. I'll block you down and I'll just lie to you.
No. I want to be number 3,000.
Absolutely, as one should. Thank you very much.
What's going on?
Keep hitting Hamed with those bad gaming takes. Hamed might get there first.
So to answer your question, right, in terms of what's going on, everyone, right?
What's up, Josh?
So to answer your question as to where my sample size has come from, like it's in various places.
Okay.
You know, I mean, you can extrapolate looking at the IGNs, which they have like 14 million followers and stuff like that, or the game spots or you know, reset era, shit like that. And you'll start noticing like there's not that many quote unquote greats on the PlayStation field, which is always curious to me. If you don't know who I am, I am a fan of Sony, not a fanboy. I'm not a fanboy off of any fucking thing, because if Sony starts acting up, that's a wrap for them too. I don't care. I will stop playing games altogether. So that's how I look at it. If they don't operate the way I want them to, as a consumer, I don't have to pay money to people that I don't like. Everybody still here? Why is it all quiet? Oh yeah, you muted. Okay, cool. And I just was kind of wondering, like, there are a lot of people that sit there and they just kind of don't really look at PlayStation as like, I mean, you have the Uncharted 2 and The Last of Us Part 1, and then it stops there. It's, you know, or Sony, or people that look at Sony tend to just only see Naughty Dog, and everything else is trash, which is curious. So I would like to ask you, what do you think of that information? The whole panel, what do you guys think about that information?
I think a lot of people who just started gaming only know about like the Uncharted and stuff like that. Like if PlayStation 1 and they go back to like the PS1, the PS2, and you don't even need to go all the way back to the PS1. PS2 and PS3 days, man, those catalogs are so crazy because that's why a lot of people want them to figure out a way to get all those games off the PS3 to the new gen because those games were masterpieces, man.
So let me say this, right? For you guys, do you ever see Sony being like is there anything that touches? Because I'm almost 40. Do you see anything that touches Ocarina of Time? The PS1 days. And that Sony's entire catalog.
That's hard. That's hard because to me, like the first, like 2 Metal Gear Solids, they were like, oh man, I don't know, man. Them first 2 Metal Gears were masterpieces.
Well, they didn't make Metal Gear. So you can't use them. Not even second party. Not second party. You can't use them.
Okay, let me see. God of War 1 and 2.
You think that that's up there with Ocarina of Time?
Yeah.
Okay. What about you, Brian? Is he still in there? That dude be floating in here like a tooth fairy and leaving.
That's Brian.
You know. So let me see. Yeah, he's out. No, he's just a listener at the moment. So who said that about God of War? Okay. What about Hamid? What about you? How do you? Is there anything on PlayStation and that rivals Ocarina of Time? Is he just muted? Hello? Is the space all jacked up? I don't get it. All right, so he's out of here. So, oh well, I don't know what to tell you. So I'm going to continue on with the show. You guys can feel free to listen, right? So I will start it now, right? In terms of how I believe that's such a stupid sentiment, right? You got to ask yourself the question: what quantifies as one of the greats? I mean, you look at some of the greats out there. Let's go PlayStation 1, right? You have your Final Fantasy 7s, you have your Metal Gear Solids, right? You have your Tomb Raiders. You have all of these types of games, which is pretty cool. And then what exactly does Sony have to compete with that was always the question, you know? I personally am under the impression, right, that Sony has things that are comparable, such as like the Gran Turismos. They've made their greats, right? And no one agrees with that, which is kind of crazy to me. So when I hear that, like Gran Turismo doesn't really count because it's a car game, you hear stuff like that. But you also have Omega Boost as well. That was that people seem to overlook, you know. And I'm going to keep going. So PlayStation 2 had your Grand Theft Autos, Grand Theft Auto 3. That was one of the greats. No matter how old and antiquated the gameplay is, people always will look at, you know, that game as one of the greats. Always. You have that. You had Final Fantasy X. You had Metal Gear Solid 2. You had Resident Evil 4. And I just noticed, and you know, stopping at that point, for some reason, it just people don't really consider it. I feel like that's kind of crazy. You know what I mean? They started considering you know, they started to consider PlayStation as being serious when Uncharted 2 came out, which it's not like they made Shadow of the Colossus. You know what I'm saying? It's not like they made so crazy to me. It's not like they made Ico. They also did a game called Ghost Hunter. That was their game. They helped out with a lot of different games. You had your Gran Turismo 3 and 4, and Jack and Daxter and all these other things. And it's like I just never understood. I never could understand, right, what quantifies as being one of the greats. That is always a head scratcher for me. I would always not ever understand that. Like not ever understand. I can't understand that for the life of me. It doesn't seem real. It doesn't seem interesting that no one considers Shadow of the Colossus all the time. Well, you can see it, but it's like even when, I mean, the rating was pretty damn high for back in the day, I will say. But usually Ocarina of Time or any of the Zeldas or whatever the case is they're the only ones, like they don't. It's like people take that shit for granted, you know. So I'm thinking I'm on the boat of it being nostalgic is the reason why people say what they want to say regarding the PlayStation exclusives. So even if you do go to, the PlayStation 3, where Sony was just throwing a whole bunch of shit at the wall and hoping something stuck, and many things stuck, just not sales wise, I'm still under the impression that people still don't give credit where it's due, and that's concerning to me. I don't feel like you are a real gamer if you're only looking for Metacritics, you know what I mean, and ratings and what the general populace and what they consider as, as the overall greats. Now there are some misses, but there's always some misses with every company, really. You know, it's not just a Sony thing. It's for every company, you know. And even with Halo, if you look at Halo, people say that's one of the greats. You know what I mean? So people typically will say that Halo's one of the greats, and it's like, okay, well, Killzone 2 would never be considered one of the greater games, which is to me is outrageous because the game, tonally and mechanically was one of the highest out there just because it didn't run at 60 frames a second. I mean, are people really looking at that as a rubric when you play Ocarina of Time at like 15 frames a second, or most of the game that you used to play was at 30 frames anyway, and if it ever got to 60 frames a second, including the Call of Duty, it was always what 45 to 60 frames a second, like anything else. So even if you did cut off the PlayStation 1 and the PlayStation 2, we still have the PlayStation 3 and what Sony had to offer there. And they've came out with things like God of War 3, which for some reason always, I guess it's considered dude bro, you know? You have the Killzone, which is considered a Space Marine game. You have the Resistance, which is a generic Halo, what people would consider. These are not my commentaries, just to be clear. This is not my commentaries. This is just, me actually telling you what I've heard over the time, you know. And that Gears of War, that Gears of War was better and all the other shit, right? You had all this shit, But there's a lot of things that Sony did gameplay wise. Like I hear this a lot where they say that Sony's games are not innovative. Let me just put it that way. Sony games are not innovative. They kind of copy existing games, which is like, what? Like the whole companion AI situation was created with Ico. You know what I'm saying? And then you have The Last of Us, and then you have just a lot of different games that had that mechanic. You know what I mean? Which to me is just funny. Just no respect, yo. Like Rodney Dangerfield style. Some of the most cutting edge AI within the game, and people will sit there and they will pretend like it's not even just technology. That's another thing I hear too. And I'm sorry, I'm all over the place when it comes to this, but I have to I have to mention this because it's ridiculous. I guess this chat didn't work. I wanted to make that shit sound better, but it didn't. Anyway, I hear this a lot. You know what I'm saying? Where people tend to think that Sony only cares about technology and their games only look good. It only looks good and the gameplay is mediocre. And then I look at people and what they say about what is good actually. And I'm like, what exactly do you think? Where do you see the good in this particular game that outstrips a Sony exclusive? That will always be funny to me, when people sit there and they say that there's just only graphics to worry about. Some of the greatest games out there had the most obscure storylines. Some of the storylines didn't even manifest, such as like a Mario game or, a Zelda game. You had to really go into there and really try to figure it out. Or the storyline was very simple, like the Zelda game. Very fucking simple, you know? Save the princess, I guess. This is typically what Nintendo games will be. And one can argue, hey, I mean, I'm not looking for all that story. Even the story narrative initiative that Sony has, right? People are supposedly, quote unquote, tired of looking at cutscenes and having characters talk, but they don't have a problem watching the fucking TV show, like, I don't know, like, what do you call that TV show again? The Invincible or any other fucking TV show that they have. They have no problem watching a TV show, but when it comes to a game that has great gameplay, solid gameplay, and the story on top of it to boot, you didn't have a problem with it with Metal Gear Solid. But when Sony does it, it's like it's over the top. It's just it's too cheesy. I don't know. It's just weird to me how they just can't catch a break. You know what I'm saying? That's the thing that is weird. How can you be? Oh, I'm so tired. I'm so tired of looking at cutscenes. The average cutscene in a Sony game is what, 5 minutes? It ain't like it's that crazy, you know. But here we are. Here we are with this corny ass rhetoric, and I will always say that it would be corny. It's just a dumb rhetoric. Ooh, I'm getting shot the fuck up. And that's how I look at it. Oh shit! I want to jump with a different weapon, but that's not what I want to do. I'm sitting there playing. Actually, while I'm at it, let me just do this here. The last 5 minutes. It's just weird to me, across the board. I look at this and it's like some of these people just, I don't know where their priorities are when it comes to what they're looking for in a video game. I would never. I really don't understand what they're looking for. I haven't played this game in a long time, so if you're looking at me like absolutely fail, don't get mad at me. Plus the music, I can't turn it off, which is really irritating to me. But yeah, oh, that's what you gotta do. I haven't played this shit in a minute. Instant headshot. So you told me, you can leave this in the comments as to what is considered, the great games. I mean, let's go over the games. You have your Gran Turismos. That's still up and present today. I can't say anything about Killzone. That may not be. They may have gotten rid of the franchise. You have your Infamous. You know what I mean? Well, that's kind of Killzone Infamous, right? Somebody that's not doing Marvel, which I believe they could have their own Marvel, if they're so pleased. You have your God of War, which completely, changed face. And it's like their gameplay may have been inspired by something else, but it created a whole new entity. You know what I mean? People say that God of War is inspired by like the Souls games or whatever, with the close camera and the lock-on feature and stuff like that, and the old God of Wars were inspired by Devil May Cry, but they didn't quite play like those games anyway. As a matter of fact, even when Devil May Cry, when I look at that back in the day, Uh, People never gave God of War its due respect. They always chose Devil May Cry. I don't know if it's because it was more flashy. Who knows? It was always funny to me that Devil May Cry was never a part of the. I mean, sorry, God of War was never a part of the conversation, other than the fact that it was based in, it was based in Greek mythology. That was about it. And they had a pair of breasts, you know what I mean, in the game, and that was something unheard of for having it so blatant. No one ever commented on the puzzles or the gameplay or the graphics, really. You know what I'm saying? And it was always like the ratings that they would receive was always like super, like mid, like 80s. Not saying that 80 is a bad score, but y'all know what y'all know. Like let's be honest here. Let me check my thing here. Let's be honest. An 80, right, is not that good of a score, you know. Uh, when it comes to Metacritic and just fame and shit like that. Let's be honest. You know, so you had situations like this where um, they get the 80s or the 85s and stuff like that, and it's like you have to be so extraordinary, extraordinary to get their just desserts. So Sony kind of like went into the realm of storytelling, and they did the storytelling because, well, apparently no one acknowledged the gameplay that they had. Even Shadow of the Colossus, which was one of a kind of a game, and Gran Turismo, which was one of a kind of a game, they still didn't get their just desserts. It was fucking crazy. You have Forza literally get a higher score, and it's the same game. It's the same game. It's the same type of game. Not saying which one is better than the other, but the premise is the same. And it's like, well, why did you give this game a higher score than the other? Like, what's causing that to happen? It's just weirdo shit to me when I look at how everything is operating. And now there's so many people that just will not give, you know, um, they won't give Sony their just dessert. I swear it's the weirdest thing to me. Um, and hopefully they fix that. You know what I mean? I just want to get this shit over with. Hold on for a minute. Slow down. Grab the wall. That music is distracting me. You get out of here. Even with the Killzone thing, like, right, when you shoot them, their bodies react, like, you know, with the whole Killzone 2, people were like, oh, their bodies are jiggling too much. You know, and it's like, what are these, like, arbitrary complaints? It's just weirdo shit, man. Like, it's so weird. I don't understand people. I don't get it. Listen, your music is fucking me up, man, in my podcast. I won't ever fucking run this game as a podcast, man. That's just annoying. Get your ass down. And the soundtracks, too, that they have for all their games. You know what I mean? People will pick a Final Fantasy soundtrack for whatever reason. You know, maybe it just has like a Japanese. Jesus Christ, man. Hold on for a minute. Die, bitch. Why are you playing this music so fucking loud? Goodness. And the funny thing is, right, as I'm looking at this, I can't even turn this bitch off. Music volume for track. Like, why can't I turn this off? Weirdo ass shit. Yeah, you can't turn it off. You just can't. Audio, and it's just stuck at 50% for whatever reason. And there's no master volume. Anyway. But I don't know. You guys gotta, you know, whoever runs across this video, feel free to leave like some sort of comment on here to see, you know, what exactly, like, how do you feel about the Sony greats? Because it feels like Naughty Dog or nothing, apparently. Naughty Dog doesn't get, you know, Naughty Dog is automatically until, well, The Last of Us Part 2. But Naughty Dog was automatically like Game of the Year because of, I guess, the story, and no one cares about the gameplay. People undermine Sony's gameplay so consistently. It's pretty disgusting to me. I know people, for instance, Horizon Forbidden West and Horizon Zero Dawn are one of my favorite games and are so mechanically sound, right? And people will sit there and just say, "Ooh, look at the pretty graphics," and don't mention anything else about the game. It is crazy to me that somebody could say that. I don't think y'all understand how crazy that is. How you can dismiss everything else but the graphics, and then say that the game is really not that good storyline and know nothing about the story. You know all the stuff about the story with the Souls games. You can read that up. Souls games, you have no problem pulling that up. You know what I'm saying? There's no problem with the Souls games, right? As obscure as it would be, you know, or Halo or any of these or Mass Effect or even Dead Space. All of those games, you give it the benefit of the doubt. And when it comes to Sony, it's like it's just graphics to me. And then, you know, you look at the fans of Sony games and all they really care about is, you know, all they really care about, nope. Nope, gotta take them down right now. So all they really care about is what makes their box, you know what I'm saying? Their plastic box look good for the competition. People and I see why Sony has literally went that direction because anything else that they try to do gameplay wise, even with God of War, people don't take that shit seriously when it comes to gameplay, and a lot of the times it's more mechanically sound than the games that they revere. You know, which is just weird to me. Um, but it is like that. Oh my God, this dude is shredding me. It is on harder difficulty. Come on, Hill. Nope. God darn it. My God. But yeah, you know, it's revered. A lot of the games that people consider as, you know, the top games here, you know, it has worse gameplay than the Sony exclusives. And I want to go back to Horizon, right? Let's go to Horizon Forbidden West. And one of the complaints about the combat is that they don't they don't have the what do you call it, melee system. The melee system is not that good. It's not considered an RPG. It's considered an action game. You know, just because they have level up systems and a skill tree. You know what I mean? It's not considered. It's not considered an online, like I mean like a RPG. It's so crazy to me when I hear shit like this. It really is. It really is crazy to me. Oh, I got one. Did I? Hello? Where is it? Oh, it must have fell through the wall. What the hell? But yeah, like I hear that, and you'll get a situation where like people will literally say that the combat in The Witcher 3, right, is so complex, it's so good, it's, you know, everyone loves it, and all this other stuff, and blah 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 blah. That's what they will say, right? And I had a couple of friends that told me this, right? And I ended up buying The Witcher. And although their storytelling is like really fucking top tier, let's get that out the way. It is top tier, man. It's a really nice story. To me, it's well acted for the most part, like really well acted, you know. Um, so I don't really have a problem with how it's acted, right? Um, but then I'm playing the game and I'm looking at these menu systems, and off the bat you could tell like this is a PC game, like for sure, for sure, for sure. This is a pure PC game. Let's be serious here. It's a PC game. and it wants you to understand that the reason, or it wants you to understand the other two games. And I get it. That's my fault for jumping into this game. You know what I'm saying? At the last like on the third entry, which that wouldn't make sense normally. You know what I mean? But supposedly when I was reading the reviews, they told me that I was able to do that without any kind of crazy consequences, which is fine. All right, cool. But the menu systems are even like it wants you to play the old game. So I was like lost and still am lost as to how a lot of the leveling up works within the game. So I got a relative grasp of the leveling up system. So now the only thing that I need to figure out is the actual gameplay. The actual physical executed mechanics. And let me tell you, people complain about Aloy being wild and when she does her melee, she swings all over the place and I can't control her and it's not good and it's not compelling and all this other shit. Boy, let me tell you this shit. I couldn't believe how wild Geralt was swaying left, right, front. And it was so ridiculous. I was like, what? Oh, shit. I couldn't believe it. I was like, literally, is this your king? Is this the best game of all time from all these people? Really? This is the game that y'all guys considered the best game of all time? This is it? This game? I could not believe it. I couldn't believe it. There's always the fanboys, right? That will literally sour the experience for a lot of different people because they make outlandish claims about their said game that they're a fan of.
Are you talking about Elden Ring?
Oh, somebody's talking right now. Yeah, I was trying to see what you would. Yeah, what happened?
No, I said, are you talking about Elden Ring?
No, I'm talking about The Witcher at the moment.
Oh. I thought it was Elden Ring you guys were talking about. I was like,
No, it was.
I don't know why you're discounting the game that everybody voted as Game of the Year.
See, and that's a funny thing, right? Here's the thing, especially with a lot of people that like the PlayStation, they always talk about Game of the Year, which pisses me off. According to Brian, right? He said that you were a PlayStation guy. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
And the thing that I hear, right, which to me is like almost always blasphemous when I hear shit from a lot of PlayStation fans, which I like PlayStation. I will be considered a fan. But what I am not, I will not say that something is good just based off of me liking the platform. If it's not good, it's not good. You know what I mean? But the thing that pisses me off about a lot of the things, right? Now I'm a back off from Elden Ring because I talk about that shit all the time. My God, why? I'm sorry. I'm playing this game and this music won't fucking stop playing, man. Jesus Christ.
Oh, I mean of The Witcher?
For The Witcher. So.
Yeah. Are you playing Wild Hunt?
Yeah, I'm talking about the Wild Hunt in particular, right? So a lot of people say that.
I'm not happy why they had to replace Henry Cavill with Liam Hemsworth.
No. I'm not talking about the show. I'm talking about the.
I know you're not talking about the show.
I know, but I'm not talking about the show. I'm talking about the actual game.
The actual game, yeah. Because that's what season is going to be about. It's going to be about the Wild Hunt.
I don't think it'd be too much of a problem. I mean, they kind of look similar. They got the body, the build, or whatever the case is. But I feel like Henry Cavill, he takes his role seriously, and I gotta give him props on that one. He's a real fan.
No, and they already removed him as Superman thanks to James Gunn.
Yeah, well, I think maybe he'll come back. Maybe.
I don't think he'll come back. They'll find another person. I know that there's going to
not Superman, not
movie, and he's going to be in it.
Not Superman. I mean, I'm talking about like the Witcher. I believe maybe they come back. Maybe they come back for that one. I don't know. Possibly. I don't know. Either way, I'm talking about The Witcher. So a lot of people, a lot of PlayStation fans, right, only like things because the Metacritic and the ratings say it's good, which pisses me off. If you want to be
I'm neutral on The Witcher because I don't have the game.
even if it's Elden Ring, everybody told people that Elden Ring was the best games of all time, and it is the most flawed Souls game that they made. Like there are complete flaws, like literal gameplay flaws, because they're juggling too much. The same problem that they had with God of War Ragnarok. The story took a little bit of a hit because there's too many moving parts, and they never made an open world game before. Yeah, those particular people. So from software, but everyone excused them because the Metacritic and because these fucking no name reviewers said it was good. Does that sound right to you? You know what I mean? And on top of it,
right to me about Elden Ring.
Huh?
About Elden Ring, it doesn't sound right to me.
What is your take on Elden Ring? Because right now the subject that I'm talking about, because I was yelling for you, man. You didn't say anything for like 15 minutes, but like what we're talking about here is if Sony's games, right? All of Sony's their whole catalog from PS1 to PS5, right? Does it stand with the greats? That was my question. And people can quickly say that it does, but then when they start listing their greatest games of all time, especially the general, like, how can I put it? The general public, right?
Yeah.
You don't hear.
To me, from the PS1 era, I think it's like the Crash Bandicoot before.
They didn't make Crash. They didn't.
The rights to Activision to remake it.
Yeah, but they didn't make Crash. I mean, they weren't owned by Sony, so I can't count them. That wouldn't be fair. That'd be like counting. What do you call it? Call of Duty as Microsoft, and it hasn't been bought yet. So I won't do that. But they made Jack and Dexter. But I'm not sure how old you are. I'm almost 40, right? So a lot of
35.
So 30. So you're around. So you're around. You know what it is. Yeah. PS1, they had the Omega Boost. They had the, what do you call it again? Gran Turismo. And that's all they had at that point in time because they didn't start buying studios that they found worthy until much later, or the next generation. But even if the next generation had things like what do you call it, Ghost Hunter, which a lot of people don't even know what that game is. They had the Getaway. You got a lot of noise in the background, bro. I don't know what that is. And I'm actually broadcasting right now.
Yeah, I'm going busy. I'm doing some trash over at my job, so.
Cool.
For a while.
Yeah, if it gets too loud, just try to. If you want to stay in there, just try to mute it or whatever, until the noise is done. But like, it's good now. I don't hear anything.
Yeah, it's just because I'm in the bathroom. That's why.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm going to be on mute for a while. Okay, because it's going to be noisy a bit.
Okay. So I'll just reiterate what I was saying before. So in essence, stretch my leggies. When you start asking people, especially the average gamer, what is their greatest game of all time, you'll hear stuff like Resident Evil 4. You'll hear stuff like Final Fantasy 7. You'll hear stuff like I don't really, to be honest with you, I don't hear too many Souls games. Maybe because it's the difficulty. Maybe now with Elden Ring, possibly you have a whole bunch of ball bags that would jump on that fucking gravy train because everyone told them that it was a good game. But you'll hear the Final Fantasy 7 or Final Fantasy 10 or Resident Evil 4 or Halo or Mario 64 or Smash Brothers or all these other games, Ocarina of Time. And I don't ever hear like a Gran Turismo, really. Why? Because it's a racing game, or some people, if they're cultured in gaming, they'll say Shadow of the Colossus. You know what I'm saying? But Sony made Shadow of the Colossus. They made Ico. They made the Jack and Daxter series, which people consider that to be generic. But then they like Mario 64, maybe because that was the first one. I don't know. They made The Getaway, you know what I mean, which was one of the first games that didn't have a HUD and stuff like that. Or there's just a Monster Hunt, not Monster Hunter, Ghost Hunter. They had that game. They had that one in there. What other games that they have that I can think of? For the PS3, they had obviously Uncharted series, the Last of Us series. You had the Killzone series. You had Starhawk and Warhawk. You had Infamous. You had God of War. And I never really hear those games pop up. I don't really hear them. The only thing I hear is like if they are considered a fan, what they'll do is they'll say it's like they're ashamed to say that they have a Sony favorite. You know what I mean? Like unless it's unanimously chosen to be a favorite, then it's like, okay, now I got the okay to say, this is it. And I just feel like that's a travesty. If you're a gamer, you shouldn't be afraid of what is your favorite game of all time. Regardless of what it is. Like my favorite game of all time, which is a tie between these things, will be it'll be Sonic 2, the first Tomb Raider, and Shadow of the Colossus. All three of those are like equal to my favorite game of all time, which isn't necessarily tied to a platform except for Shadow of the Colossus. But it's like most of the gamers are so fixated on review scores that they literally will be like, yeah, what was the highest review score for Sony? Is The Last of Us Part 2? I mean, Last of Us Part 1? Uncharted 2? Yeah, that's my favorite game of all time. It was just so good. And to be honest with you, mechanically, they were the most simple games out of all the games that Sony has made. Even Jak and Daxter was more complex than the Uncharted games. You know what I'm saying? And then I'll talk about I'll go back to The Witcher versus the what do you call it? Horizon. And all you hear is that the melee wasn't that good. The combat really wasn't that good. The game can become boring. It wasn't really an RPG, and it is exacerbated when you have the Forbidden West. Like people just tend to just completely forget. Like it's so wild to me, and my jaw drops every time I hear this shit. My jaw absolutely drops because it doesn't make any sense to me. I had two friends recommend The Witcher, and one thing I could say that the strength of The Witcher is the story for sure. And their side quests are they have a good flow, the side quests, a very good flow. But when it comes to the gameplay, the menu system is convoluted. It is crap. It is crap of a menu system. I don't know what's going on. It's like you need to know how to, use a PC to understand their menu systems. And even if you did understand the menu system, the gameplay is really clunky. They got a lock-on feature, and when Geralt spins his sword around, he's flying all over the place. The camera gets all caught up. It's very laggy. The animations are stiff. You know what I mean? Unless it's a motion capture animation, like him vaulting over like a waist-high thing. It's like very or an execution. It is very stiff. His dodge is very stiff. He just kind of leans forward and slides. And then I'll hear this from the fans of The Witcher, and they will literally just completely ignore all these things and say that the general consensus, I will say this, is that the combat is okay. But when you hear fans of The Witcher, they're like, oh my God, it's so good. Especially some of them say it was the best RPG they've ever played, and that's the standard. And I'm like, what the fuck? And then they have the audacity to talk about when it comes to melee systems, they talk about Horizon, and Horizon is a bad melee system. Like, bitch, they got combos and they got counters and stuff like that. No, they don't have a block, but like, really? The block really made you feel like it's shittier? The animations are a world apart. And then I'm looking at people play for Spoken too, right? This is another grind a gear that I have to grind, right? And I feel like maybe what's happening here is that, and I said this in another video I've done before, I think what's happening when it comes to people is that the culture of um, the actual culture of gaming is set. And to me, it's like if you're a Japanese developer, you get a hard pass, when it comes to like faulty or average gameplay, as long as it has like flair and style that is of anime. That's when it's like, oh, they can do whatever the hell they want, you know. They can have like poor graphics, you know what I'm saying? They can have poor animations and skip frames and shit like that, and it's automatically fucking cool because it's like a Japanese developer. And as soon as a Western developer does their own thing, then it's like average at best. It doesn't make any sense to me when I'm reading these things. It's like, what am I reading here? Going to Forspoken, people are trying out new combat techniques and and really trying to learn the mechanics of the game. But then when they play Horizon, all they use is one bow, and then say that the game is dry and the game is like it's weak in combat, and I can't kill the enemy. But yet when you play Forspoken, you want to mix and match spells. Like, newsflash for you, right? You want to know something that's very curious? The technology that is in Horizon, such as the bombs, which are the explosions, or the acid, or the plasma, that's nothing but magic reskinned. And the game is very, very deep when it comes to mechanics. It is extremely deep when it comes to mechanics in terms of what they're trying to do or what they have accomplished actually with the game. You have a system that you have an element called purge water, which stops special attacks like fire or ice or any kind of like electric attacks. It makes them just physical attacks, right? And the enemy becomes drenched and more susceptible to either ice or electricity. Depending on what the enemy is actually or the machine is actually weak to, you could then, right, apply electric. If they weren't really weak to it, if they're in this purged state or the water drenched state, then you can crack that threshold for that enemy and make them become weak, which shock actually stuns the enemy and they can't move, and you could do more attacks or whatever you want to do with it, or you could freeze them, which doubles your damage. And you get stuff like that, and people literally just stick with a basic arrow. It is ludicrous to me that people will look at a PlayStation game and be like, yo, the mechanics are not that great, but at least the story is, and at least the graphics are. So I'm just going to stick with that. As long as it has a good story, that's all I care about, and hopefully it gets a good score. And I'm only going to pick these games with a good story and good graphics. And I just want to blow through this game, and I'm not even going to like really do research on the technology. Like, what? Get the fuck out of here, yo. Y'all don't have any problem with any other game, especially if it's Japanese. But when it's another game, y'all don't want to explore the mechanics at all. And then you want to sit there and say that The Last of Us is one of the best games of all time, and Uncharted 2 is one of the best games of all time, and all you're doing is pew pew and follow the corridor and follow the yellow fucking climb the handholds. Really? I can't get down with that. I can't. You sound foolish. Even if you are a PlayStation fan, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. It really is. When I hear shit like that, it just lets me know you're not really a fucking gamer. You're a follower. You're a follower. And then you're so wrapped up and caught up in you're so caught up in gaming politics that you can't even game. Y'all so worried about game of the year. And guess what? I don't give a hell. I don't give a rat's ass what game of the year is. Elden Ring will never be my game of the year. Ever, never, never, ever.
I agree with you, man.
I see all through the Elden Ring shit, man. I've already played the other Souls games. Just them adding more better animation for certain special attacks, or a horse, or a semi-open world. You think I'm going to call it game of the year? Because of art, y'all willing to sink your teeth into the mechanics of a Souls game, but when it comes to a PlayStation game like God of War, for instance, y'all don't want to touch that really. Y'all want to put that shit on gimme story and just blow through the game as easy as fucking possible. That's what y'all want to do. And because the storyline is good or compelling or have good games, that's why y'all don't like the games. A lot of the people that have PlayStation, right? They don't like that shit, right? Or a lot of people that don't have PlayStation or the PlayStation is their secondary. They're like, oh, I'm so tired of the cutscenes. There's too many cutscenes because you fucking not really playing the game or trying to sink your teeth in the mechanics. You're just trying to watch a fucking show, and the gameplay is getting in your way. What's your take on Elden Ring, by the way? Are you there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Yeah. What's your take on Elden Ring? I'm just kind of curious. I'm not trying
That's
to.
what you're talking about Elden Ring.
And
Like the mechanics are flawed, everything there is flawed. Bosses are recycled because let's say the next boss you're gonna face, you're like, haven't I killed you before?
you know what's funny? Because they actually have these mechanics, right? The mechanics. I'm not mechanics. The bosses are in a fucking. It's in another IP, and I'll speak to a lot of people, right? That like, first of all, when I see a person that is an avid Souls player, when I see them, I realize how much of a fan they are for all Japanese games. It's like they use Elden Ring as a catapult to tickle their fancy or their fetish of Japanese games. They're like, finally a Japanese game that's successful. I don't care about the flaws, but y'all can see the beauty of it because I like anime and I like this and I like that. And I'm like, bro, you want to know something? You really want to know something? There are a lot of successful Japanese games out there.
They're even better than Elden Ring.
Not even just that, but it's like they in their mind they feel like Elden Ring, right? Is finally like the spokesman for all Japanese games, and it's like
And
finally people notice.
Why they even chose it as Game of the Year? Because it was co-created by George R. Martin, the same person that wrote the Game of Thrones books.
Oh no, we already like if you astute with this shit, yo, it was all political anyway. Sony would have mopped.
I understand because majority of people that play the Game of Thrones fans. That's why.
There are a lot of people that say, "Wow," like, and to be honest with you, like, even when it comes to like the type of enemies and shit like that, it's like they had better enemies in other From Software games anyway. So it's just kind of weird to me that they chose this game to run with. We already know the reason why everyone said that this game was the truth is because the guy from the Game of Thrones. I guarantee you, if that guy wasn't a part, because that guy meant mainstream, right? That's what that guy meant.
That's what he did.
He meant mainstream, and so it attached itself to the Souls community. Which, by the way, which is interesting, a Call of Duty game wiped all the success of Elden Ring in one fucking month, you know. But we won't talk about that. You know, people say that Horizon didn't do well, and even though it's on fucking two platforms, but I digress. But like, I think honestly, I think something's burning in my kitchen actually. But I think honestly, right, what's happening here is that people are so influenced by influencers. They're so influenced by influencers that they can't make up their own mind when it comes to what they should think. I thought I turned that shit on medium. Oh well. They're so hell bent on that shit, and it's just funny to me that they can't make up their own mind. They can't. They whatever the influencers tell them is what is what it is. That's how I see it, and it's a shame. And this is not like a Elden Ring hit piece. This is like in general. I'll look at people that will literally bypass all the mechanics that are in any PlayStation game and sit there and say that it's not that great. Shit, Gran Turismo. I know somebody that they can't play Gran Turismo. They don't even want to learn Gran Turismo, right? But they want to learn that fighting game though. They want to learn that. They want to learn that Souls game. They don't got no problem learning that and spending hours upon hours. But when it comes to or any other fucking racing game because it's arcadey, they don't have a problem doing that. But when it comes to something that really, really requires some sort of skill, they don't want to do it. And that goes for Horizon, and that goes for any other PlayStation game that has a high skill cap. Shit, even God of War, you can become really fucking good at the game. And you know what the difference is between God of War and such as like a Japanese game? Japanese games typically rely on like patterns. So this is why someone can use a DDR, or Dance Dance Revolution pad, and beat one of the hardest bosses within the game. That's why you can do that, because the game is so heavily focused on a pattern that as long as you know the pattern, you're good to go. Well, a lot of games for PlayStation, especially something like Horizon, you gotta have the dexterity and the reflex time to really be good at the game, and it is exhausting playing a game like that. It is hard. The game is very difficult, especially when you put it on a higher difficulty. And on top of it, right, Sony had to do this. They had to start adding difficulty levels, because if they try to do a Souls style where there's no difficulty, their game will automatically not get beaten and automatically get a lower score, which is so ludicrous to me. Like, people don't have time to play, to learn the PlayStation exclusive game. So they got to make all these assistants and accessibility, you know. That's what they got to do, because at any other time, they're just like, it's like they don't, you know what I mean? They don't take any game seriously. I don't think Sony games get taken seriously anyway, across the board. I don't think they do. I mean, what you got to say about that? I know I've been ranting all day. Yeah, I know I've been ranting all day, so just, you know, I apologize for being so hard on like the community, but like it just burns me up that all Sony is known for is a story driven games. Like, no one's looking at the gameplay. Really? It's just a very strange concept to me, man, that what is it, the story is so good that it overshadows everything else. The graphics are so good that it overshadows everything else. Like, what exactly is happening? I don't know.
What's happening is that many people, they just look at not just the arts or the patterns, just only like, maybe like Souls game because they like to rage quit a lot on the games, on the Souls game. It's like those, you know, like those crazy tryhards.
Well, the people that complain and they say get good, they're not the tryhards. You know, and the funny thing is, anytime you criticize a Souls game, they immediately say get good. They don't even listen to your critique. It's just automatically get good, get good, get good. And sometimes the critique has nothing to do with your difficulty. Maybe it's just like, damn, they couldn't do anything better than this boss. Like, I get it. I don't want to play that way. Like, why do I gotta, like, you know, why do I gotta do this particular way in order for, like, why give me 250 weapons if I'm only allowed to really, truthfully use, like, one? And then you got the people that will say, okay, all I'm wearing my panties in a club. That's the only thing I need because I'm so good. No, I mean, you just learn patterns. And a lot of the patterns, they'll sit there and they'll tell you what exactly the patterns are, and then that's all you needed. I don't know. Like, I'm not saying that the Souls games aren't difficult, you know, for certain people, but I will say that it is definitely pattern based. I don't see nobody beating God of War or DDR on a Dance Dance Revolution pad. I don't see anybody doing that, and I will continue to say what I said until I see it. I don't really think it's that possible to do on the hardest difficulty, because Apparently, the Souls games are already on the maximum difficulty.
I mean, you don't see someone using a DDR pad like frequently or doing it on stream. Because I think I see someone that did it before on FBG.
What's that? I don't.
Clip of it.
The what?
Because I see someone that played God of War on a DDR pad, but I think that person was doing it for clout.
What did he put it on? Fucking Give Me Story?
I think he did it on either Give Me a Story or Give Me God of War.
I mean, don't get it wrong. Like, every game on Earth will have a pattern to it, right? But a lot of Japanese games are heavy with the patterns. Like, it is super heavy with patterns. That's what it's...
It's not even hard on God of War. All you need to do is just anticipate the enemy's attacks. Just keep on dodging, and when is your right moment to attack, you attack. Because that's what happened with me with that stupid Hamdal.
No, that was an easy boss battle, actually. That was easy. I was impatient, trying to beat the game as fast as possible because I didn't want to be spoiled. But retro, going back, it was very easy.
It was a little bit hard. So it took me like 3 or 4 days to beat that guy.
Well, I mean, maybe because you were rushing through it. You know what I mean? But like when you look at,
I realized that I was rushing through it, and I just feel like if I could just relax myself and calm myself down, I'll be able to beat this guy. And which I even did.
That's interesting that you said that you have a hard time with Heimdall. That's very interesting.
Because all I did was just use the spear, but I had to dodge. It was during the the first phase was easy. It was during the second phase when he was using that Bright Frost hand of his.
Oh yeah, when Kratos giving that ultimatum.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of times when I'm playing video games at night, like at 2-3 o'clock in the morning Eastern. You know what I mean? And I usually play multiple games at once. Like today, when I'm playing my video games, I will be playing like Horizon for like an hour and a half.
Right now, because I don't want to take too much of my break time.
Oh yeah. Go do your thing. I'm about to end the stream anyway.
Okay, I'm just gonna.
Yeah. Well, thanks for providing your input and just being here. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, despite the fact that I'm busy working.
Yeah, I just wanted to get in, get my little comments and stuff like that. So, yeah, that's pretty much. I mean, if anybody that's in here want to have if they have anything to say, that's fine. But it seems like no one has anything to say. What's going on, Kerr? You want to have any final words in this podcast of me yet again ripping through Elden Ring?
I just joined. I'm not even sure what the discussion is, but funny enough, I am ripping through Elden Ring. I'm playing right now. Funny enough.
Of course you are. And I guarantee you probably have one of those Japanese pillows in your New York apartment, don't you?
One of those what?
One of those Japanese pillows.
I don't know. No, I'm not no weeb.
Who said anything about a weeb?
But you know what's funny? I do have the little pot guy from Elden Ring. I do have him as a little plush. I bought it for my cat. And I was like, that looks cool. But no. What's the topic of discussion?
So I'm a clip exactly. I'm a clip with you. Yeah, this is going to be a nice little clip here because it's going to be interesting to hear your thoughts. I gotta send you a video on Tomb Raider Angel of Darkness, and a lot of people didn't like the game, and the game was incredibly incomplete.
But it was so good though. It's like one of the it could have been so much. I feel like it's one of the only two. Like if they're gonna do like a remake of a Tomb Raider, that should be the one that they do it to.
Nah, if Courtesan ain't with it, and I know one person actually died from Courtesan, which kind of hurt my heart. If Nathan McCree ain't on the horn when it comes to the soundtrack, you know what I'm saying? If those original,
do you remember the Angel of Darkness soundtrack?
Yeah, they used the London Symphony Orchestra or some shit like that.
Yo, that is probably one of the most beautiful soundtracks I've ever heard in video games.
and it's so shitty that it's attached to like not shitty, but it's just so unfortunate it's attached to such like a buggy game because that soundtrack, like I still remember that intro like sound like
that harp, how it starts off.
That beautiful harp that like chimes you in and the menu loads in and it's like, oh, I'm like playing next gen Tomb Raider. Like
it's very pretty.
About to go down like. And like even like at the end when when Curtis dies and like they do the reprise of like the original Tomb Raider theme with like the symptom like everything.
See, but that's the thing. You're never going to get look. I'm not easily wooed by high quality sounds. I'm wooed by the actual like, you know what I mean? Like the actual the melodic, the construction of the actual melody and stuff like that. Like, there's a song in Tomb Raider 1. I think Tomb Raider 1 is probably one of the most beautiful soundtracks I've ever heard in a game. I've never seen such a fitting soundtrack for a game, like, ever.
It was pretty. I mean, the early Tomb Raider had good soundtracks, too. Like, I don't think they ever really dropped the ball. Like, at least I can think about at least with the classics and Angel.
After three, it you know, Nathan McCree actually left, but they used all.
Oh yeah, you're a Chronicles and Last Revelations hater. I forgot.
First of all, I'm not a Chronicles and Last Revelation. Where did you hear that information? That's false.
No, I'm fucking with you. I remember last time I said I like Revelations. Like that was my favorite Tomb Raider. You said that was like one of your like least favorites. So I was like,
It's not that when I say least favorite, I'm splitting hairs, to be honest with you.
Gotcha.
What made it suck is first of all that rope when you went from one side. That one rope, I forgot where it was. You had to jump from rope to rope. I remember when I was in middle school. Oh, that was fucking awful, man. You couldn't line up the shots, and PlayStation had like really warpy textures, so you weren't quite sure if you were gonna land. How many times did I fucking jump that shit and she just fell to her death? She didn't even. They should have had some kind of magnetism, sort of like when you pull the switch underwater to just kind of bring you towards it.
Right. I mean, hey, those are the early games. Like, I could sit like, you know, Vice City. You know that one mission with the little RC plane that like.
Yeah, I remember that shit. I never had too much of the funny thing is I never had too much of a problem with that.
Well, you know what's funny? I beat that game like 3 times, and different platforms. Originally on the PS2. PS2 took me forever, but I played it again when I got my iPhone 5, and they had like an iOS version, and I played it there, and it was super smooth, which I found funny because
they adjusted it.
On the screen.
They adjusted it, by the way, for those.
Yeah, I feel like they did something because I like originally, and I even remember like going on the forums, like people were saying like that level was crazy.
Don't get it fucked up. It was hard, but I've played harder missions, and the funny thing is Jak 2. I don't know if you ever played Jak 2, but there was a mission in Jak 2 there. They needed to be ashamed of themselves. I couldn't believe what they did. I never felt, bro. I was a grown ass man when my eyes was burning out of frustration. I almost cried, man, out of anger. You know, I remember sitting Indian style, right? That's probably racist nowadays to say, well, fuck it. Anyway, I was sitting Indian style, right, in my living room, and there was nobody around me. I had the coffee table behind me, right, and I just kept dying. I remember just thinking to myself, like the feng shui of the room was fucking me up. I was like, this fucking coffee table, move.
Like it was everything else but the game.
Yeah, it was everything else but the game. I was like, I feel something. It feels weird. This coffee table is distracting. Something about this energy levels. I was stressed.
Shit. Sometimes, like I know when I'm getting too into it when I have to stand up, and I'm like, whoa! I just like reposition my whole self just to like beat this shit. It's like clearly. Anyway.
But
I feel like we're going a bit off.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask you in a second, but I wanted to actually finish off. I wanted to finish off the Tomb Raider conversation. So, the thing that I hated the most about what do you call it? The Last Revelation is the levels were way smaller. That
You thought?
they were interconnected, right? So
Right, that's what I'm saying. Like,
yeah, but I was like the levels in Tomb Raider 3 was some of the largest without a loading screen. Like there were multiple levels. There was multiple ways of getting through a level, especially in India. I'm just about to I'm gonna send you some soundtracks too, yo. I get what you're saying, yo, but I'm still thinking about what you just said about the soundtrack for Angel of Darkness. Like that game, I remember, right? Look, this is how much of a fan I was, right? This is so crazy, right? Because I had a couple of friends that knew I was just a Tomb Raider horror, yo. I was so serious with this Tomb Raider shit, yo. It wasn't even funny. I remember them showing the first Tomb Raider, which they dubbed Tomb Raider Next Gen. And I remember them showing her in that blue tank top. And she was near like the waterfront. Do you remember that shit?
I'm trying to remember the ad for it.
When you see it, it was on a demo disc, and they just had a cutscene. When you see it, it's gonna give you a nostalgic bomb like no other.
Okay, yeah, send it to me, cause like
I was gonna send it to you this morning, yo, because I was running across. Like sometimes I'll look at Let's Plays of different games, and sometimes the Tomb Raider ones pop up. Because I like to see, the developers back in the day, they were hardcore trolls. The way that they did things. If you played the first Tomb Raider, right, they wouldn't even turn on the sound effects for the animals until they were on your screen. That was deliberate. You're going there, and all of a sudden, there would be a wolf in your ass, man.
Right, and you're I remember.
You don't hear nothing. You don't hear nothing until you see it, man. That game was horrifying, man.
I think Tomb Raider was when I really was like, yo, I need to get a game console. Like, I remember playing it at, like, I was at the church somewhere, and I went to someone's house, and they had a PlayStation. They didn't know what I was doing. All I knew was I had guns, and I was jumping around and moving. Like, I played video games before, but never in that, like, kind of thing, and I was just like, I want to play that game again and again. And then when I figured out that it was Tomb Raider, it was a wrap.
I played Mario 64, and I always wanted Sonic to be 3D. And Sonic, when they made it 3D, which was the Sonic 3D Blast, awful. It lost all DNA. And I get it, the technology was just nowhere close to making a Sonic game in 3D.
Do you remember when they did MK4 in 3D?
Yeah.
Did you like that? Or did you
I
that?
didn't like it.
Yeah. That was interesting.
I see what I didn't dislike it, meaning like I was angry, but I was like, this ain't it. You know what I mean? But I see what you're coming from.
That's the first game that I ever thought that maybe I see why the ESRB exists. There's a fatality in that game that still traumatizes me to that day. And I don't know if I was like really young at the time when I saw it, but like I think it was Quan Chi. He like pulled my leg off and beat me in the head with it.
Oh, I remember repeatedly.
I remember seeing it at a young age, and I think I stopped playing Mortal Kombat for years up until Deadly Alliance because I was just like traumatized. Like it was just one of the most goriest and craziest things I've ever seen in a video game.
Sometimes you don't even have to be gory, which, like I said before, Tomb Raider to me was a horrifying game because I've never seen a main character die like that. You know what I mean? I thought that she was just gonna have a generic fall animation where she just lands, she's like, and she falls over, right? That's what I was thinking. So I remember one time I missed a jump completely, yo, and she hit the ground hard. I said, oh my, and what they will do, and they did it with the old ones, is that they'll let that sink in. The game over screen won't pop up for like a good 5 seconds. They'll just let you look at her dead body.
Right.
And then they do
whatever may have been down there walk over you real quick.
Yeah. The lion will sit there and walk slow as shit. You know what I mean? Maybe growl once, and then they'll pull up the passport. I was like, look at this shit. But the thing that traumatized me is she fell on some spikes, and the sound that she made was horrifying, man. Like it sounded like she got like poked through her torso. Like I was like, oh Jesus.
I mean, you know the spike tracks in Tomb Raider. It's going all the it's full penetration all the way out. Like
yeah, she fell. Like I remember she fell and she threw her head back. And I know how to do the sound effect because I played this shit. I remember I showed my fucking aunt. I was like, look at this game, this shit crazy. She was like, what? She fell. She was like, ah. I was like, oh shit. I remember she jumped a little bit, my aunt, because she was like, what the fuck, But going like for Tomb Raider, for me personally, I remember the first time, like I have a couple of videos to show you. I remember the first time I was in St. Francis's Folly, and I've watched Let's Plays repeatedly over the years. But the song that came out is always just like a wave of goosebumps, man. It's just a very beautiful soundtrack, man. It's like it's, I don't know. It just invokes so many memories that doesn't exist. It feels like I remember something, but like it's weird. And it's just like a really cool soundtrack and stuff like that. So, like I said before, the interconnected thing, I didn't have a problem with. The problem was with the last Revelation was that it was broken up, and I never wanted to see a load time, especially when you had Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver not having any load time. So I was like, well, why can't any game, like every game, should be able to do this shit on PlayStation if they were able to? So that was my whole thing. And then going from large levels that were interconnected and you just had that one level to solve made the puzzles a little easier to understand, you know what I mean? Because you couldn't progress to the next level until you solved that whole area.
The Revelation puzzles were fucking wild. Those are the wildest puzzles.
Some of the things that they require you to do was like, why? Like, are you for real?
Yeah, like honestly, there's microtransactions back then. I probably would have gave you the 99 cents for like some of those like later levels because funny enough, they used to have like the 900.
I called that with Tomb Raider 1 when I was in Atlantis. The one I told my aunt, I was like, can I call this number? I'll get look. I was put a timer on there. I'll be on there for 3 minutes. So I was stuck in Atlantis, right? Or not Atlantis. It was like the Natlas Mines, I think it was called, right? And they was like, press 1 for this level, press 2 for this level. So I pressed 9. I'm trying to hurry up. So as soon as it started off,
they already got $10 off of you just because you couldn't even skip through the bullshit.
No, you couldn't. They was like, go to the level here, make a left, make a right, jump down here, shoot that wolf, go over here. I'm like, hey. I'm like, I'm trying to learn.
Yeah, that was the day of like, what was the site I used to go on? It was like cheat.net or whatever.
Then there's Cheat
CC. When I used to get little times in the computer lab, and I would print all that shit.
Oh, you were yo! I swear to God, you must have been like a offshoot of my fucking like of a personality.
That was the other one I think back in the day.
I used to go to the library too, yo. I remember I would stitch up the I would literally tear the pages out of some of the strategy guides and staple them the fuck together and make a book out of that bitch. Or I would go to the library and pull up the cheat CC and all the other stuff where they would give you the levels or the cheats or whatever the case is, and I would get all that information. And I remember it's funny looking at people that actually never played PlayStation 1 games apparently. Because the one person was like, this is specifically for The Last Revelation. You know that underwater like door that you have to pull and you have to she uses her legs to open it up or whatever the case is. It's not like a handle.
Right, but it's not. But it doesn't like necessarily. It's not outlined. Like it looks like.
A lot of the but and you like.
Yeah, it looks like just normal artwork. I know that level.
I would take a shit when I was younger and read all of the like. That's where you would get the mechanics from. Is the actual manual.
Right.
They didn't know that. They was like, how would I ever have figured it out? I'm like, dumb bitch, the manual. They show all that shit.
Right. When you used to like take a shit and they actually gave you game manuals and you take it in the bathroom with you and you're like reading through everything. It's like, oh, I could use that. Oh, that's what I could use that for. Like,
yeah, they was like the crowbar. They was like, oh, don't forget to pick up the crowbar because when she uses it, it falls to the ground. I'm like, oh, okay. And I'm reading like some of the like Let's Plays that are looking at it. They're like, how would you have ever figured this out? I'm like, that's how most of the games say these.
But also, you got to remember back then, like at least for me, I think I was under the ESRB rating for Tomb Raider. So it's like if I'm like a 9 or 8-year-old, like 10 maybe playing Tomb Raider, my brain is not necessarily as like developed as it is now, where I could like see the obvious in like a puzzle or something. Like I remember
so you can speak for yourself.
Like now it makes total sense. But when I was that age, it was just like, what the fuck?
That last level when you go into the pyramid where they had the bowl and the 3 switches.
Oh, he has to run into yeah.
Nigga, like no, you have. I think you could open. You can like basically because they gave you some of the like the hieroglyphic alphabet in the manual or in your inventory rather, and you will put in a code and you can lock the bull into that room so you won't be bothered by it. But you have 3 switches that you can pull or push.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, and when you push the switches, right, it'll open a door. But when you open a door, there was these like little symbols, and right above it was like this little like opening. You needed your binoculars and a quote unquote night vision to see the other combinations of the door. And that was something like I was like, who the fuck designed this, y'all? I remember when I was like, why would you do this?
You got to remember, Core was trying to go out. They were trying to kill the Tomb Raider franchise. So it was to give them everything, the kitchen sink, the most like intricate levels. And I know there's some criticism like, oh, it's only in Egypt, but the game is called Tomb Raider. And when you think realistically, where are most tombs located? Like she's going across all these like great tombs and pyramids of God, like everything.
I didn't think that was a problem, her being in Egypt, because fucking Africa's a big ass fucking place. So I mean, I didn't ever.
Some people complained about that. They didn't like the fact that she was just in one location, but I thought it actually brought the story. Like it actually made it like that's why it's one of my favorite Tomb Raiders. It was consistent. You got a little bit of everything. The puzzles were hard.
What about Alexandria? That shit looks so like I remember being absolutely amazed where you meet Jean-Yves. I remember being absolutely amazed by the water fountain where you can open the door and you go up to Jean-Yves or whatever.
You're not talking about the cut. Sorry, maybe I'm thinking about the cutscene when she's like pulling up.
No, it was the one. It was like the sandy-ish level or whatever the case is. They had the water fountain in the front, and it was like the hub area basically. So that area was the hub area for when you had like the puzzle with the gold lure again.
Okay. Let me make sure. Is this the same level where you have to do? Is this where you go back and forth and they also have that like little playground of Egypt thing going on?
Yes, that one.
Okay, so yeah, I think I know what you're talking about, but maybe just that like landmark didn't stand out to me.
It was when you can always go back to Jean-Yves, and he had like he had like the whole like he would have his feet up on the desk, and you could actually
okay, gotcha.
And you can go up and talk to him or whatever the case is, like it will play a cutscene or whatever. But you would always that would be your hub area. So I'm not just sending you a screenshot, but like yeah, they had like a water fountain that was pretty cool, and the fact that they upgraded the AI. The AI was able to jump chasms like you were. You know what I'm saying? I was like, yo, that's fucking dope. It was just the levels were smaller is why I didn't like it. And they got convoluted because they were sectioned off the way that they were. And in terms of Chronicles, I actually like Chronicles a lot. It's just that I was...
And to be fair, you never said anything negative about Chronicles. I was just throwing it back because I know you're like a Tomb Raider fan, and because you said you didn't like Last Revelation. Most people immediately hate Chronicles right afterwards because of how short it is. What you were just saying, just because of how short it is, and just because of what it is, it's not like much innovation. But I enjoyed it.
No, the submarine level is fucking amazing, yo. I love the submarine levels.
Yeah, that is one of my favorite levels in Tomb Raider. It's like that one level where you don't have your guns, and I was stuck on that for so long. Like, how the fuck do I get past this? And then one day, it's just like you hit X, and you hit the crowbar, and then the game continues. So I'm like, oh shit. I
read that manual so much, man, and that was such a breeze for me. Like when you go behind, like what I'm telling you right now, I haven't seen this shit in decades, right? I'm 37, but I remember this shit, right? When you walk behind the cook, right, in the kitchen, and you bust his ass up beside the head. I just thought that was so cool when the submarine was like sinking, or not sinking, but flooding or whatever the case is, and it was like the wires were like dangling. It was caused the water to be electrified and stuff like that. But
it was so cool. I actually like that whole storyline with her and the Russian guy, and like at the end, he's just like, "Lara, take this. Go on."
She tried to help him because she was a cold-hearted bitch in the third one, man. I was like, Jesus Christ, man. She shot a fucking pilot in his head, yo. She was like, no, I'm not playing no more games. I'm really not in that one. So,
man, that's cool. That's cool. But okay, so sorry, I didn't mean to like turn your podcast into like a Tomb Raider like nostalgic like thing. But what was your original Top Script discussion?
I know. Just one more thing about Angel of Darkness, man. The possibilities of what that game could have been. When I read about the story and what they were going to do, because it was supposed to be a trilogy, it was supposed to be like Paris, right? And like the whole city of Paris, essentially, the whole city.
They should have done that for the fucking tired excuse for a reboot. Which, granted, I enjoyed the reboot, but I couldn't backflip in the reboot, and that's just my criticism.
You couldn't. Well, I was like, man, like the
Tomb Raider is about backflipping and side jumping and doing all those crazy like parkour platforming. Where was that in the reboot?
And I didn't like the animation. She was very stiff, and it didn't look realistic. It was very like when she did a flip, it looked really awkward. Like, and I'm like, how the PlayStation 1 games? I get that the controls were sacrificed for the animations, but like, I'm like, man, it was going to have RPG elements and shit like that. You remember that one guy in the Peruvian or Peru? What does he call it? Peruvian? How you pronounce that shit?
The Persian ghettos, like that level.
Yeah, when you talk to the one guy or whatever the case is, and you badmouth them, he would just fucking shoot you. Did you ever do that? She was like, I don't gotta watch my mouth for nobody. He was like, are you sure about that? Bam! I was like, oh.
You're done. Bouchard.
Bouchard, yeah, it was Bouchard, right?
Yeah.
And I'm gonna tell you, they have some of the most advanced. What do you call it? The actual motion capture for the mouth. It was able to like the technology for that shit was really crazy, and especially because it wasn't that realistic. But they also had titty physics, where each titty.
Well, first of all, bro, I'm about to fucking block you.
What?
What the fuck is not titty physics, bro?
Don't act like I would clip and DM.
Titty physics, bro.
They literally said that though. They literally said that they spent a lot of time on that shit. So I remember she got busted up on the side of her head.
Development went, and that's why when I used to swing the camera, I could see hollow through Laura's head and her eyeballs, and that shit would fucking give me a bigger jump scare than Resident Evil.
that was one of the reasons. They I read up on this. It was able to, with the physics that they had, clash with each other. And then it had like a threshold, so like when she's lying down, it won't flatten, but it will flatten a little bit, and it will separate. The type of crazy shit that they had in there, like I'll clip a bit.
Someone had to sit in there and program 1 and 0s in C++ to make sure that the titties bounce and jiggle and compress the way that they need to, instead of making sure that the game fucking ran correct.
It's frustrating, but I'm gonna see you. I'm gonna zoom in and I'm gonna slow it down. I don't want to hear nothing. Don't call me a pervert because somebody did it. I didn't make the game. Somebody programmed it. I'm just an observer. So anyway, going back to what you were saying, going back to the topic at hand, right? So here's the thing, right? I noticed that when you talk to people about the best games of all time, not a lot of Sony games from PlayStation 1 through PlayStation 5 are actually ever really mentioned. As a matter of fact, people say that Sony's games are not really...
Wait, so before you can... actually, go ahead before I interrupt.
He got hyper. He was like, who said this? This is like a general consensus with like IGN and Twitter and all these other forums that I go into. So in my head, I just basically use an aggregate of all of these responses and just made this assumption here. So essentially what ended up happening was, right, when you ask people what are the top 5 games of all time, it's barely any PlayStation games, despite the fact that Sony was in the game for almost 30 years. You know what I mean? They'll mention like a Resident Evil 4 or Ocarina of Time or a Final Fantasy 7 or things of that nature, you know what I'm saying? Or Halo even, you know what I'm saying? Or Mass Effect And it's like no one ever really mentions PlayStation games. So two issues. The first issue is that I don't think even to this day people take Sony's mechanics seriously. I don't think that they take it seriously. I think that they think that Sony is like a one-trick pony. You know what I mean? And that all they do is narratives, and that the gameplay was always lacking. And I don't know whose fault is that, but I don't hear people talking about. Because remember, you had Omega Boost, you had Gran Turismo, you had Ico, you had Shadow of the Colossus, you had the Jack and Daxter, you had Ratchet and Clank, you had the Sly Cooper, you had Infamous, you had The Last of Us, you had Uncharted, you had Killzone, the God of War series, you know what I'm saying? And it's like all these games, and I barely hear about it. It's like the question here is, can Sony, match up with the greats? That's my question.
All right. I guess to rebuttal that, right, and not to go into like statistics or who you hear this from in the forums, when people do mention like, let's just use the top five, right? The top five best games of all time. What do you usually hear? Or like, it doesn't have to be a consistent top five, but what are the games that you consistently hear that are like the best of all time?
Metal Gear Solid, Ocarina of Time, The Last of Us, Uncharted 2, Halo.
Wait, so sorry. You mean outside of Sony or within, like?
I mean, like, the question here is, can Sony hang with the greats with their games? That's the question.
Oh, I mean, I guess I'm trying to figure out what's the bar for what the greats are. You know what I mean?
I don't know what the bars are. I'm just reporting what they said.
Like for me, right? Like for me personally, I think the best video game of all time is World of Warcraft. But I'm biased in that because I have a lot of
Well, you're a gamer. You're a gamer, so.
Huh?
You're a gamer, so I mean, like you're an actual gamer.
I consider myself a casual, but you know, at the end of the day, like I feel like if I'm gonna say like in terms of like I think the issue like today and asking that question is because now I think people are more brand aware of things, like not even just video games, but just like in music, just in terms of like where certain artists are signed to, where your clothes is being manufactured. Like consumers are just way more conscious, and I think back then, right, like when Sony was originally like, I think the platform to play games at, no one was thinking like, did Sony make this first or not? So I think for like a lot of people, if you ask the general population, like if I ask my homegirl right now, and I'm like, you want to play Crash Bandicoot? She's gonna be like, yeah, let me go get a PlayStation. She's not gonna think, oh, that's like an Xbox exclusive or something. So I think like PlayStation kind of being like the biggest platform at its like peak, and still is like right now, right? But just kind of being like that household name and brand, people are not necessarily thinking, oh, does PlayStation have exclusives? People are just thinking, I could buy a PlayStation, I could play anything, you know. But I definitely think PlayStation could certainly compete with the greats, especially within the last couple of years. Like I've talked to people who like they're not really gamers, but they've heard of Uncharted, they've heard of The Last of Us, they heard of the God of Wars. Like they hear of these games from Sony, but I don't think like if you're talking about like competing like amongst gamers, like maybe, I don't know, it's a lot more critical because we're all playing the games and we're paying attention to brands and stuff, but we're just talking about like general public and just what people are just going to buy when they go to the store, whatever the case may be. I think Sony is going to be fine, personally. Like, I think once you penetrate outside of like your little niche like gamer realm, and you could penetrate pop culture and you could just get the masses, and Sony has done that very well. They'll always compete.
All right, so Jemiah, what's going on, bro?
What's up?
So what do you? I know you're listening to this. So what is your take on this? Because I feel like and let's say 20 years from now, are these games that everyone says the great, is it going to even be respected? You know what I mean? As like people are still mentioning Ocarina of Time, people are still mentioning, Resident Evil 4 and stuff like that. Does it have that kind of staying power?
I mean, I guess like you can't really compete with nostalgia. You can't compete with games that came out when we were kids because they hold the biggest place in our hearts. You know what I mean? So people sound like old games. And the biggest problem with Sony is a lot of their games back in the day were like Sony exclusives by default. You know what I mean? Because other systems weren't capable of doing it. You know? So like with the 64 and shit and the PS1 came out, a lot of those games like GTA 3 and shit, they're just default, de facto Sony exclusives just because of the hardware. You know what I mean? So,
Well, I'm talking about actual in-house made
that's
games.
what I'm saying. So like, as far as like people naming games from back then, like most of those games are third party. So Sony never really had a huge first party back in the day. So of course people are gonna name a bunch of different games. Nowadays, I don't know if these games will stand the test of time. You know what I mean? Like, can you say that The Last of Us 1 will still be like one of the greatest games ever in 10, 20 years? I mean, maybe not. You get what I'm saying?
Well, I get what you're saying, and it makes sense when you say that, and it's part of it is nostalgia, but then you look at it, and like you said, you can't beat nostalgia, but I think people associate Sony with Naughty Dog only as if the other games don't exist. When they did PS3, man, they did a whole bunch of fucking games that were really fucking great.
I'm not gonna lie to you, bro. I think a lot of people associate a lot of those third parties with Sony now. Like
that's what I'm saying.
You did a Spaces like a month or so ago where you're like, who's the mascot for PlayStation, right? I think if you asked anyone, like the general population, they probably would have been like Crash Bandicoot or Lara Croft, right? But we know those are not. We as gamers know those are not Sony IPs anymore. But because that was the console back in the day, and that's like the household name, I think.
But I'm talking about now, like right now, the types of games, because like they hit their stride with, I shouldn't say hit their stride, but they started building their legacy with PS3.
Yeah, and I think it's gonna be a time will tell kind of thing. Like the kids really like Fortnite right now, right? So that might be like the game that's still talked about in the next 20 years, or like the Overwatch or whatever the case may be. But you really can't say we're not 9 or 10 years old playing like The Last of Us Part 1 or The Last of Us Part 2 to really have that like, okay.
But we are gamers, and
our nostalgia area is over already. Like, so in 20 years when we look back, we might not even be able to remember shit. You know what I mean? like we're gonna be old as fuck. So like the kids nowadays, they're gonna remember like, remember that one time in Fortnite I did this, or that one time in Call of Duty I did that, or Madden. They're not gonna remember like playing like fucking God of War, Ragnarok. Like how many kids are actually playing and beating these games? You know what I mean? Mostly grown ass, not like us.
So let me ask you this.
It's also a little harder too, because the kids these days, like in terms of like new IPs, like trying to be remembered. Now everyone's competing. Like it's not just games competing with games, right? Like kids could go on TikTok, kids could go on Netflix. They could do other things instead of just like play a gaming console, and so much more accessible. So I think overall, the impact that games will just have on the next generation is like there'll be more gamers, but it'd be less of an impact just because you could kind of split up your time and just like how you want to enjoy stuff. Like back when we did it, if you had a console, you had a console. If you had a computer, you had a computer, and that's what you were on. Now you just need like an iPhone, and you could do, you could be on social media, or you could be like on a game cloud and be playing a game. Like your attention time is split. But
my whole thing is this though. This is what I'm saying. What nostalgia cuts off at a certain age? Is that the revelation that I'm hearing right now? Like, because what's going to happen is like the 9-year-olds and 10 years old, right? They're forever going to remember what do you call it? Fortnite and Minecraft and what's that game, Among Us, and that's going to be their favorite game of all time. And it's like the older you get, you can't even like fucking like the older you get, right? You become disenchanted with every fucking thing. You know what I mean? Like I think personally, God of War because God of War has such strong gameplay. I think that that's going to be amongst the greats. I can't give it to The Last of Us or any Naughty Dog game since PS3 actually, because their games were very simple and it was basically a story-driven game that you followed along with that was more interactive with. They were more interactive than one of those story games where you pick a narrative or whatever the case is. You pick what you want to say. You know what I mean? Or Skyrim is another thing that people are gonna, that can stand the test of time. Resident Evil 4 is another game that was so strong gameplay wise that it stood the test of time, and you didn't really care about the narrative. Like you can still release and play just as fine because the mechanics are so fucking strong. Resident Evil 4, you know.
I feel like PlayStation. I feel like PS5 has one of those. It's not talked about. I feel like Returnal.
Ooh.
Ooh, sorry, might be a little spicy. I don't know if that's a spicy hot take.
I don't think that's a spicy hot take. I don't think so. I think that's just right.
I think Returnal.
Wait. Let me say it. It's gonna sound racist. I don't give a fuck. Who is hot curry? Who is hot? It's really hot. Hot curry. That's what it is.
But I mean, not that many people bought Returnal, so it's like.
No, I don't care how many people bought it. Like we're talking about like if you can go back and play that shit and be like, yo, this really was a fucking classic.
But like, I don't see a lot of fucking like 10-year-olds playing Returnal and gonna be like, yo, this is crazy. Cause like when I get older in 20 years, I'm still gonna be like, yo, I remember playing fucking Final Fantasy Tactics when it first came out. I'm gonna remember all the Super Mario World. Where when I beat Super Mario World, that shit will forever be goated in my eyes. You know what I mean? Like nothing like. Beating that game was so fucking difficult when I was a kid, you know what I mean? Me and my brother spent fucking hours trying to beat that shit, or Contra and shit, that shit would never be, no game today can top those memories as a kid, you know what I mean? Like, no matter how good it is. So, it's like...
No, but I have to give that to you.
Games could ever be like that for us, you know what I mean?
Well, I'll say this, right? I felt the same thing, and I had the exact same way I feel about Elden Ring is how I felt about World of Warcraft 15 years ago when I played.
I think I threw up a little bit.
So I know it's possible to get those like feels again, and I would even go as far as to say like when you're talking about social exclusive. I think for me personally, like The Last of Us Part 2, I won't forget that game. Like I really enjoyed that game, and I love the discussion and everything.
Hold on, who's playing? Who's fighting? Having a fighting game in the background. What is that?
Oh, I'm playing fucking God of War. Hold on, that was muted.
All right, go on from my bed.
No, I was just basically saying like in terms of like games that like I'll like remember like a couple of like a decade or two from now. Definitely Elden Ring is going to be up there. And I would say The Last of Us Part 2.
I'm sorry. Hold on. Wait. And Bloodborne I would say Bloodborne is definitely, it's so solid as a gameplay. It's solid as hell. You know what I mean? Where you can always pick up the game and the mechanics are so forward thinking. It's like, just like Returnal, like you said. If you know what I mean, 30 years from now, somebody pick it up and we still have controllers in that regard, they'd be like, yo, this shit is...
Returnal feels like what if they were modern, like, arcade games, like a modern version of Asterisk, that's what it would play.
Yeah, yep.
Like, you put $1 in and you move your joystick around and you hit the buttons and you go through. Like, it just feels like a game.
And it's funny, too, because they have the narrative that's pretty cool as well, that's cryptic, and it's just the right amount of cryptic. But more
right, I've been following it loosely, but I'm gonna so I'm actually on the last boss of Returnal, but I was like I stopped playing the day I got to the last boss of Returnal. I actually got Ragnarok because it was just coming out, so I haven't played since.
See the thing is, right, I platinum Returnal, and I platinum that shit without any intervention.
Oh shit. Okay, badass.
No, I mean, and I feel like that game is actually a skill-based game versus pattern-based. You know what I mean?
That game is actually really... I told my friend, I think that game is harder than Sekiro. And...
Well, shooting...
the Souls games, like, people like to beat their chests about like, oh, I beat Dark Souls like this. It's like play Returnal. That shit.
The funny thing is, yo, all these people that say that's the funny thing. Every time I go online, people get good, go play, get good, get good, get good, right? These were the main fucking people that quit Returnal.
And if, I'm sure if you check that sample size, they also probably quit Sekiro because of how strict it was in the gameplay, which is honestly the best Souls game in combat.
Let me ask you this question then. If this is the case, right? Why do you like Elden Ring so much? If it plays very similar to the other game, is it the atmosphere that you kind of like dig?
I don't think it plays similar. Like, I don't think it plays too similar. Like, I get what you're saying with like with some of the melee weapons, but like, I think with like all the options you have to like go about combat, I think it's great. And then, like I said earlier, I played like WoW for like 15 years, so like anything with like high fantasy RPG elements, I could customize my build, and it's like I feel like the open worldness of Elden Ring is like I still like I'm like 10 trophies away from my platinum right now. That's what I'm working on, and I'm still bumping into things. I'm like shit. I beat this game. I'm like 100 and whatever hours in, and I'm still fucking going. And it's like as I'm playing, I'm collecting new shit. I'm like, yo, I want to try this build. Oh, I could do this build. And then they added the PvP, and it's just like the cherry on top for me.
But the PvP is kind of broken though. That's been well known.
They say it's broken, but I think it works. Like, I mean, it's not ranked PvP. It's not MVP, right? It's just like, what did you do out in the world? And once again, I come from like an old school era of WoW where PvP was never balanced, but WoW was like such a big PvP game. And I always believed in like, if you as a player, if I sat down here and I number crunched and I found the right amulet and I found the right stats and I did all these things and I'm able to overpower you, that's fair game. Now, granted, we live in this time where people will try to like meta and people go online and you just like try to quickly run through and like copy someone's spec, but you still have to play that spec. And it's not like Elden Ring is like an easy game where you can just go through kill a boss and get the weapon. It's not 1, 2, 3. Like it still requires you to like farm and grab certain things. So it doesn't really bother me, but like especially when the game came out, that just like that community feel because of how cryptic the game was. Like I was finding one thing, texting my homeboy, then we had our little Twitter group chat, and then it's like someone's like, yo, check over here, you could get this, you could get that, and it's like I haven't experienced that since I played WoW. Like
so that's what it is.
Like,
so it's two things that I'm going to come out and say this, and I get it. You know what I'm saying? It's two things that's blinding you from any kind of flaws that it has.
okay, go on. Sorry.
There's the community that I hear this a lot. You know what I mean? That community is tight because it's so. There's the cryptic nature, and then also beyond the cryptic nature, it's like, you know, it's discovery. You know what I mean? And the funny thing is, you want to know something that really made me be like, wow. Community was PlayStation Home. That barely had any gameplay in that bitch. It's just very funny how Community can just like make you like ignore a whole bunch of fucking things if you're talking to people, because the game, that's part of the gameplay, is the communication with the people. And I would say that the other thing that blinds you from it is the high fantasy nature of it. Like for me personally, I like realistic looking games. That's like surrealism, where it's realistic but it's off a little bit, like something seems like it's exaggerated.
Like a cyberpunk kind of thing.
Cyberpunk is, I guess that would be considered it, but that's a little bit more on a lot. Like, well, I'm just going to Horizon is a really beautiful game, but it has very realistic elements, right?
Right. I actually just started playing that tonight. Funny that you brought that up. I just installed it and started it off.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about that at some point, man, because this is what I'm noticing about Horizon, right? And I'm gonna say this, and I'm gonna probably wrap up the podcast here, because I don't want to take up too much of your time, right? The thing is,
like I said, I'm doing my platinum run.
Oh, cool. I'm just sitting there playing Killzone Shadowfall. I'm kind of pissed. I can't even turn the fucking music volume down. This shit is like loud. I'm like, it's 50%, yo. I'm like, my fucking head is rattling. But maybe I could just turn down the entire volume and just have the microphone. But then no one would hear me. Anyway, I'm just thinking about how I can do this shit better in the future. But regardless of the matter, right? What I'm noticing about Horizon, right? People swear up and down that you can't make builds in Horizon. You know what I'm saying? And that game has multiple fucking builds, which pisses me off because everyone was so willing to learn the secrets of Elden Ring or The Witcher or Forspoken even. They were so willing.
I don't know what Forspoken, you know what? I will feel bad, like, it doesn't have the graphic fidelity that Horizon has, but just like off the demo, I wasn't like necessarily like, damn, like it felt good.
It does.
Like,
it does feel it does. It feels very good. You know what I'm saying? And that's no cap on my end. That's not the complaint that I'm saying. I'm saying that people are willing to delve into the mechanics. You know what I'm saying, of Forspoken, because on the outside it looks like an Infamous clone that was made by, you know, the East, or influenced by the East. But when you play the game, it's really not like that. You know what I'm saying? It's pretty deep, and people are combining spells. They're having these tendrils to hold down the enemies, and then they're doing this and that. And I'm like, you know, the same thing really happens with Horizon. You can tie down the machines. You can hit them with frost to double your damage, or, you know, you can hit them with what they call purge, which stops special attacks like fire or any kind of ranged attack, so that all they can do is like melee. You know what I'm saying? And then you turn around, and if it's drenched with this fluid, it makes these machines that would not normally be susceptible to frost or shock more susceptible. You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, no one's trying to learn that at all, which is fucking crazy. You know what I'm saying? They just pick up the bow and arrow, and they're like, well, I mean, you know what I think
it is, right? So something like where an Elden Ring can get away with, like, you know, if you feel like, you know, people are willing to pick up the mechanics and all that stuff, I think that overall, like, the Souls games, at least, like, you know, within that realm, they give you a lot of agency and, like, how you kind of, like, move your character around, how you do stuff. And even in the one game that they didn't give you agency, Sekiro, like, people, like, a lot of the fans were turned off by, right? And I think, like, with a God of War, like a Last of Us, where you don't have as much agency with the character controls and things like that, I think people gravitate to those characters better. And it goes back to your spaces where you were saying, like, a month ago, right? I think, like, when I was, like I said, I just installed Forbidden West 2 hours ago, and I was just playing through it. I'm back on ER. And it's nothing against Forbidden West or anything like that. Looks amazing, and I think the gameplay will be great as I progress through it. But for me, I spent like the first 15 minutes of the game not doing anything, right? There's cutscenes, there's this, there's the backstory, and it's like all that good stuff, which is fine. But like, Aloy is not a compelling character, right? So, like, she's not someone where it's just like, I really want to see what you could do, or like, okay, let me dive into this like world. At least not yet for me, right?
So she's not. Well, let me hold on. Let me stop you right there. Right there, right? And the reason why I'm saying this, right? Because I'm not a Aloy fan per se. I'm more of a Horizon fan, if anything, more than Aloy. I like the universe. Now the thing is, I love how people say this shit, but then they play a game that's an RPG that doesn't even have a main character that says anything fucking at all, and they're like, all of a sudden it's a make or break situation with characters. I can't get into it. I'm like, your character don't even fucking speak. Like what? Like what?
I have to create my character. I understand. I'm like tarnished or whatever. I'm not supposed to be here. It's like I'm a man of not many words. I understand that.
So Aloy should just shut the fuck up, basically.
The nature and the atmosphere gives you that. Like,
bro, people need to cut it out with that shit, bro. It's like Link doesn't say shit. Mario is like, come on, bro. Like, people act like Aloy has to. I don't know what they want from Aloy. Maybe she needs to fucking strip tease these niggas or some shit. But like, I don't understand.
Like Jemiah always gotta get it there. Captain Save-A-Ho.
Master Chief, if it's like 4 words, the whole fucking thing. I don't think it's like a Kratos boy.
And here's the thing, I'll even say this, right? Like, I'm not a big fan of Kratos by far or whatever, but like, even with like the latest God of War, like a good chunk of like the starting time you're holding a controller, and I don't necessarily have a problem with that, but I'm invested. Like everything about like what's going on was like, okay, I kind of want to get more. Something about like Forbidden West is kind of like, all right, it's gonna be my pick up and play. And maybe I haven't gone in deep enough, but so far it's just kind of like.
Yeah, if it doesn't connect with you, you don't have to like force it.
And you don't. You don't.
Fucking silly. That nobody like Aloy's an outcast. She grew up as an outcast, so of course she's gonna be like really like distant from people. She's not gonna have a huge personality. That's part of the game and the lore of the game too. People don't want to just know the fucking story of Horizon. You don't care. They pick up the phone. You see a bunch of fucking dinosaur mechs and shit. They're like, yeah, they want to shoot that shit. That's it. It's like, what the hell?
It looks like what she's looking for some AI to like get rid of like some corrupted like release some. I don't know.
That's what the thing. See, I can hold on. Wait. Hold on. Let me say this. Right. Let me say this. First of all, hold on for it. Thank you guys so much for watching my podcast. Not this one. I'm not going to end the spaces. I'm going to end the podcast here. So thank you so much for watching my spaces. You can go on my Twitter at Sir303, and then you can get it that way. I'm going to continue the conversation outside of the YouTube. But thank you guys so much, and I'll give you like a shorthand version of this. But peace.